Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love to the author and me. On to the show. This scary silence was maintained for at least 10 minutes before it was broken by Aaron Motzi's voice. He glared right at Scarface, and seemed to have gritted his teeth, saying, "Tell me about the situation back then. If I were to find out that you left out a single word, just wait for somebody to put you inside a gunny sack." Yes, Scarface swallowed his saliva with difficulty again. His whole forehead was instantly covered in cold sweat. Even if he was just a member of the outside circle of the Blood Brotherhood, he also knew what put someone inside a gunny sack meant. This was the most severe punishment of the Blood Brotherhood. It was always used to deal with traitors, consisting in placing the person inside a gunny sack and then beating them into a pulp. Scarface knew what was the real pulp. When he first joined the Blood Brotherhood as member of the outside circle, he already witnessed a traitor being placed inside a gunny sack. Countless wooden poles were smashing into and beat him for a day. When the gunny sack was opened, there were only bits of mashed meat. There was no way to differentiate what was a shoulder or a thigh. Scarface wiped off the cold sweat off his forehead while recounting what happened at the Emerald Tower to Aaron Motzi. He did not leave out a single word. Even the incantation to summon the Bloodvine spell was recited by his mumbling voice. Although he sounded more like a chicken than reciting an incantation, at least he did not end up in a gunny sack. "Fook, I should make someone give you another scar on your face." Aaron Motzi just finished listening, and he gave Scarface another slap. When he pointed at Scarface's nose while scolding him, he was so angry that his hand was shivering. "Mage Felix wants me to go to the Emerald Tower? Such an important matter, and you actually left it unsaid till the end. F***ck, are you a human or a pig?" After saying this in a hurry, Aaron Motzi did not even feel like bringing those trusted subordinates that he went to prepare the gifts. He just told them to inform the other leaders that were close and powerful that Mage Felix had returned. Then, he brought Scarface to the stables and the two of them found a carriage, leaving straight for the Emerald Tower. While sitting in the carriage, Aaron Motzi was really sweating. Luckily, this idiot Rosie was too stupid. Although he had blockaded the Emerald Tower, he did not create any disasters. Although Mage Felix had always been merciless, he was not unreasonable. As long as Aaron Motzi were to explain properly, there would be some chance. Scarface, who was at the side, was restless. He had joined the Blood Brotherhood for 3 years, and he had always been a member of the outside circle. He was usually fighting or killing at Gerosa City in hopes of being recognized one day and entering the core ranks of the Blood Brotherhood. As for the top leader of the Blood Brotherhood, Aaron Motzi, he was just like a legendary figure to Scarface. Even in his dreams, Scarface had never thought that there would be a day that he could actually see Aaron Motzi with his eyes. He'd also never thought that a young mage called Felix would be able to make Aaron Motzi so frightened with just a single sentence. Aaron Motzi was having cold sweat all over, and he did not even care about wearing a jacket, leaving straight for the Emerald Tower in a hurry. Scarface knew that when he had mentioned the name Felix, that panic-stricken expression on Aaron Motzi's face was real. What sort of person could scare Aaron Motzi to this extent? Scarface had no clue. When the carriage had arrived at the gates of the Emerald Tower, the information that the Blood Brotherhood had disseminated had already spread throughout Gerosa City. Among the 11 great magic families and 6 underground forces, all of them seemed to have just experienced an earthquake. All of the leaders that heard this news immediately had their pupils enlarged. That monster had really returned? That battle in the Aurora Square had totally crushed their confidence. They did not even have the courage to resist in the face of that young mage that was like a monster. In Gerosa's area, the name Felix seemed to have some sort of magic to it. Even people like Isra and Reuben were in a daze for a while when they heard this name. Then, Gerosa City suddenly became really lively. Be it the 11 mage families or the 6 underground forces, they were all in motion simultaneously. A large number of the leaders of the forces immediately got off their carriages like Aaron Motzi when they heard this news and went straight for the Emerald Tower. The streets that were usually deserted immediately became incomparably lively. A few acquainted leaders exchanged their opinions while being in a rush. Although everyone had different opinions on the details, one thing was certain: another storm was about to brew in Gerosa City. What? Izra was at the family smithy, holding a ring that he had just enchanted. When he heard this news, the ring in his hand fell and landed on the ground with a ding. Mage Velek has returned? Izra was in a daze for a minute, and then laughed for no rhyme or reason. Ha 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 ha, that's great. Mage Velek is finally back. Izra quickly called a few subordinates over and gave out orders one by one. You, hurry over to the Saruman family and tell this news to Reuben. You, bring my seal and bring a group of the family's mages, at least 50 of them. Get them to be on standby, there might be a battle at any time. As for you two, go to the family's warehouse and pick the best magical equipment, then follow me to the Emerald Tower. Yes. After those competent subordinates received their commands, they quickly went their separate ways. There was only Izra left at the family smithy, laughing for no apparent reason. This news that he had been waiting for a month had finally arrived, and Izra really could not contain his laughter. This time, the man's family had bet right again. When Shadow's Nest was conquering the Demon Fall Valley, the man's family stood by the Guild of Magic without any hesitation. When the Shadow's Nest burned down the Emerald Tower, man's family once again stood by the Guild of Magic without any hesitation. Just based on these two incidents, it was enough for the man's family to no longer worry about their standing in Gerosa City for another 100 years. This was the change from ally to comrade in arms. Just a different word, but it was a totally different relationship. Allies were united due to benefits, but comrade in arms stuck together in life and death. Velek, you are finally back. There were a few elderly magic shooters surrounding Linley inside the guild hall. All of them were telling him every single detail of what had happened to the Guild of Magic during this period at the same time. Their accounts were rather messy, but much more detailed than Kevin's. From their mouths, Linley heard more details. For example, after Shadow's Nest invaded the Emerald Tower, they were even garrisoned here for a night. During that night, it was as if they turned the whole Emerald Tower inside out. It was only until after dawn broke before they set the Emerald Tower on fire. After that, they returned to the Demon Fall Valley while flaunting their prowess. When the members of Shadow's Nest left, they were somewhat dissatisfied. It might be because they did not find what they were looking for. Linley was listening carefully. He even threw in some questions in the middle. This conversation lasted for almost half an hour. Everything that had happened to the Guild of Magic within the past 2 months started developing into a rough outline in Linley's mind. Yet at the same time, a few of the younger apprentices that had joined the Guild of Magic in the last 2 months were inquiring with curiosity. Their hearts were filled with curiosity and doubt. Almost everyone was asking who was this young mage called Velek, and why was it that once he returned to the Emerald Tower, he received cheers from everyone? Could it be that his status was higher than the missing President Jirian's? He is the pride of Emerald Tower, Mage Velek, those that were asked had replied with a proud look. After that, they would patiently describe to the new apprentices the sky-high price of the potion auction, the shocking battle of Gerosis, and at the end, they would even add, without Mage Velek, the Emerald Tower would not be what it is today. When these several older magic shooters were almost done conversing, Aaron Motzi's carriage had also arrived at the gates of the Emerald Tower. Aaron Motzi brought Scarface. They walked with their heads buried. Once Aaron Motzi thought about this incident, he could not help but want to give another slap to Scarface. It's all because of this damned idiot. If it wasn't because of him doing something stupid, I would be treated like a guest, no matter what. Once I arrived at the Emerald Tower. Why would there be a need to be like this now? I can't even lift my head up, just like a thief. But all was well. At least Mage Velek left some orders and said that he wanted to meet Aaron Motzi. While walking in, there were obstacles being deliberately placed in his way, or at least it could be said so. The gazes from those magic shooters were already uncomfortable enough. Once he thought about this, Aaron Motzi could not help but curse in his mind. F***ck, it's all because of that idiot Rosie. Once I return, I will definitely put him inside a gunny sack. Good morning, Mr. Motzi. Linley saw the two of them enter the Emerald Tower from afar. After greeting them, he found a few chairs in a corner of the guild hall and invited Aaron Motzi along with Scarface to take a seat. Honestly, this was a little rude. After all, Aaron Motzi was the leader of the Blood Brotherhood. Based on status and position, he was no different from Jirian. When he came to visit, he should have been invited into the guest room. However, it was a pity. Shadow's Nest had burned the Emerald Tower. Although there was not much damage as help came in time, the guest room could not be used. They could only be inconvenienced and sit in the guild hall. Morning, Mage Felix. When did you return to Gerosis? Why didn't you say anything? If I knew you were returning today, I would definitely fetch you personally. Aaron Motzi was filled with anxiety. He did not even know what he was talking about, so why would he even still care about matters? At this time, even if he were asked to sit in the toilet, he would also do it without saying anything, not to mention sitting in the guild hall. Haha, I came back in the afternoon. Linley laughed. He did not point out Aaron Motzi's faulty wording. He just said a sentence as though he was talking to himself. I have been away for 2 months, yet Gerosis seems to have changed a lot. Yes, the change is really a lot. Aaron Motzi's mind was perturbed, and he did not know whether the other party's words had any hidden meanings. He could only follow the flow of the conversation. But I did not imagine that the change would be so huge. I remember that the old Gerosis would not have anyone daring to block the front gate of Emerald Tower. Linley's face had a forced smile, but his gaze fixed on Aaron Motzi suddenly became stern. Mage Felix, Aaron Motzi's head immediately tightened, and when he looked at Linley again, his voice was stuttering even when he spoke. Mage Felix, let me explain. Haha, there's nothing to explain. If I am not mistaken, you will definitely tell me that all of it has nothing to do with you. It was this brother Scarface's idea. How is it, Mr. Motzi, am I right? This? It's okay, Mr. Motzi. Let's forget about this issue. You don't have to explain, and I will not investigate. Let's pretend that it never happened. After all, the Blood Brotherhood is our ally. We, the Guild of Magic, still have this much magnanimity, huh? Aaron Motzi was in a daze. Before coming to the Emerald Tower, he was thinking a lot. There were all sorts of possible results, be it good or bad, but the best result would still be being extorted. After all, the current Guild of Magic had a lot of things to be done. They needed a lot of funds to rebuild the Emerald Tower, and Aaron Motzi had already prepared himself to agree to it as long as the terms were not too demanding. As for this, Aaron Motzi had not reacted to it when he heard Linley say, I will not investigate. It was only when the words had been spoken that Aaron Motzi became stunned. How is that possible? Aaron Motzi was very clear about the personality of this young mage. Back then, Cromwell had been killed by him with a single icicle when he'd caught 2 of his friends. What kind of luck was Aaron Motzi enjoying? His subordinate had blocked the main gate of the Emerald Tower and announced that the Emerald Tower needed to hand over Guild of Magic, yet it could all be treated as if nothing had happened. Could it be that this young mage had suffered from some tragedy during these 2 months at Alana, and his personality had changed so much? Don't be so nervous, Mr. Motzi. Emerald Tower is one of the 18 forces of Gerosis. Maintaining the peace and harmony in Gerosis is just a small issue. Please don't take it hard. But I have something else more important to discuss with you. Please speak your mind, Mage Felix. As long as it's something that the Blood Brotherhood can do, I, Aaron Motzi, will definitely not reject it. Such a big issue was not to be investigated, so Aaron Motzi did not dare to make any excuses. Before Linley could even say what it was, he had already pounded his chest and agreed. It's like this, Mr. Motzi. I heard that around Gerosis, there is a place called Demon Fall Valley. The scenery is beautiful, just like in a fairy tale. I've always wanted to take a look. After reaching this point, Linley took a pause before continuing, but it's a pity. I heard that recently, the people of Shadow's Nest had occupied Demon Fall Valley and laid all sorts of traps. I've been cowardly, afraid something might happen while I'm enjoying the scenery. So, I was thinking of asking Mr. Motzi for help. Help me get a map of the Demon Fall Valley. It's best that those dirty traps can be found, lest something happens to me while I'm enjoying the scenery. Aaron Motzi was dumbfounded. He had seen his fair share of shameless people, but this was the first time for him to see someone so shameless. F***ck. Alana has indeed changed this young mage's personality, but it was just that he has become even more shameless. Aaron Motzi's expression was restless. He paced up and down in the room like a bundle of nerves. He had been in control of the Blood Brotherhood for tens of years, but he had never been as flustered as today. After fighting from the sidelines for tens of years, all had been destroyed by the blind idiot Rossi. F***ck, what was this idiot thinking? He was actually stupid enough to cause trouble at the Emerald Tower for a small sum of money. Did he really think that the Emerald Tower would be completely destroyed after Jirian's disappearance? It's going to be big trouble this time, unless Jirian doesn't come back, otherwise, he will definitely take revenge on the Blood Brotherhood. At that point, there was really no place to cry anymore. Aaron Motzi got angrier the more he thought about it. He looked at Scarface for a long while, cursing in his mind. F***ck, could it be that this idiot was sent as a spy by some force? No, I must think of a way. Aaron Motzi thought about it, and in the end, he gritted his teeth and called a few of his trusted subordinates over. Prepare gifts and follow me to the Emerald Tower. Yes, and you, Aaron Motzi pointed at Scarface, who was trembling in fear. Bring your henchmen and follow me to the Emerald Tower to comply with the punishment. Staying alive or dying would depend on your luck. You idiot, you'd better pray that Mage Felix has not returned yet, or else. Mage Felix? When Scarface heard this name, his head immediately tightened. He plucked up his courage, and asked while stuttering, Boss, you said Mage Felix, is he a young man in his 20s, black hair, black eyes? Yes. Aaron Motzi was deciding which gifts he should bring. He did not pay any attention to what Scarface was asking, and he only nodded absent-mindedly. But after he nodded, Aaron Motzi's eyes were suddenly wide open. He instantly grabbed Scarface's collar. You've seen him before? Scarface swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Why yes. Fook, Aaron Motzi immediately drew in a cold breath, and stood there without speaking for a while. It was like he was in a daze, and his brain only had a single thought. He's back, that monster is back. Scarface was bewildered, but he could bury his head into his shoulders, and did not dare to say anything else. He was clear that he had to have caused serious trouble serious enough to cause him to lose his life. This time Aaron Motzi really thought he was going to die. Even if the bandits of the Blood Brotherhood were second to none among the large forces of Jorosis, they would not be able to take such suffering. The current Demon Fall Valley was not the same as the Demon Fall Valley before. Ever since it was invaded, it had been managed as a core area by the Shadow's Nest. It was heavily guarded, and there were all sorts of traps and portals. The Shadow's Nest managed the Demon Fall Valley like a metal barrel. Based on Aaron Motzi's estimation, at least 80% of Shadow's Nest's forces were garrisoned there. This young mage had spoken about it too lightly, demanding the map of the Demon Fall Valley the moment he spoke. Aaron Motzi really felt like telling him, Master Felix, that is something that our brothers have to use their lives to obtain. Of course, he only dared to complain to himself. He did not have the guts to say it out loud. On the contrary, he had no choice but to smile. It is the Blood Brotherhood's honor to be of help to Mage Felix. There was no choice. Who asked this Rosie to do something stupid? F***ck, is the main gate of the Emerald Tower something you can block? Furthermore, of all days to block it, you had to choose this damned day, bumping into Mage Felix when he was returning to Jorosis. Isn't this F***king pushing the whole Blood Brotherhood into the furnace? F***ck, wait for me to return and settle the score with you slowly. Thinking about this, Aaron Motzi really felt like killing somebody. He fiercely glared at Scarface, who was beside him. He had made up his mind long ago. When he returned, he would definitely let these idiots have a taste of his power. Then, I would have to thank Mr. Motzi. Linley only gave a delighted smile at this point. You're welcome. Mage Velik is too courteous. The two of them were unctuously chatting when there was another sound of carriages coming from outside of the door. Linley turned around and looked outside of the Emerald Tower's gates with uncertainty. He saw that there were tens of luxurious carriages parked outside the gate, and there were acquaintances walking out of these carriages one by one. Isra from the Mance family, Reuben from the Saruman family, Anthony from the Roland family, Daphne the thief, the boss of the black market Old Odin, and so on. With just a glance, the leaders of all the notable forces in Gerosis had arrived, with the exception of the Merlin family. All of them had brought gifts, and their faces were filled with smiles, asking the apprentices on duty to let them in. The two young apprentices on duty at the door were terrified. Both of them had just joined the Emerald Tower in the past month. What they experienced was the toughest time for the Emerald Tower. Although they heard from some senior mages how powerful and glorious the Emerald Tower was in the old days, after being used to cold shoulders, both of their minds had already thought otherwise. They even reckoned that the so-called powerful and glorious past was just a fantasy that those senior mages came up with. At this point, with tens of carriages parked outside the Emerald Tower, these two young apprentices finally believed that what the senior mages said was true. The Emerald Tower of old days had once united the whole Gerosis. Looking at the names this group of people gave, all of them were like thunder piercing the ears. TSK, TSK, TSK. The Mance family, the Saruman family, and the Roland family. All of them were people that could shake Gerosis with just a single tap of their feet. When they stood in front of the apprentices and respectfully informed them of their visit's goal, the two apprentices immediately had a floaty feeling. Mage Velik, do you want to see them? The two young apprentices respectfully stood there. Their gaze towards Linley was filled with fanaticism and worship. That was respect and admiration from the bottom of their hearts. There was no sham or deception. To them, this young mage that was almost the same age as them and had single-handedly restored the Emerald Tower to its former glory was a living legend. Of course. Linley personally invited the crowd into the guild hall. Looking at this damaged Emerald Tower suddenly having so many guests, naturally it was a long exchange of greetings. It took about half an hour before the crowd were seated as guests. The sincere and passionate exchange of regards and polite conversations made the atmosphere incomparably harmonious. It was just that in the midst of this harmonious atmosphere, some of the leaders with better judgment started to frown. For example, Isra. Long ago, while walking into the guild hall, Isra had already felt that something was wrong. All the while, he had always been the sharpest leader out of the tens of forces within Gerosis. It was as if this wealthiest man in Gerosis in his 20s was born with a talent that could see what others could not see in a person that he had just laid his eyes on. Most probably it was because of this reason that he was the first to be friendly with the Guild of Magic back then, and he was also the first to form an alliance with the Guild of Magic. It was just that today, Isra suddenly felt that his sharp eyes had suddenly lost their ability. What the hell? Isra cursed in his mind while chatting away with a face full of smiles. It was because he suddenly realized that already impossibly strong young mage had actually undergone a terrifying change in 2 months. If one were to say that the old Velik could make people feel that they could not go against him, then the current Velik had already reached another realm. It was like everyone was living in a different time. They could see him and hear him, but they could not touch him. F***ck, he's at least an archmage. Isra instinctively swallowed his saliva. An archmage before his 20s. Just thinking about it gave Isra goosebumps. When he looked at Linley again, his eyes were filled with fear. Isra's expression was complicated, but Linley was right there, talking in a jovial mood. In reality, even he did not realize that ever since he'd returned to Gerosis, he had slowly grown accustomed to this role that Jirian had. He was used to leading the Emerald Tower and jockeying for power with a crowd of leaders. The crowd sat in the somewhat damaged guild hall and spoke glowingly about the changes that Gerosis had in these 2 months. In this time frame, naturally some of the loyal leaders were indignantly condemning the Merlin family for taking sides with the enemy as well as Shadow's Nest's pillaging. When these leaders spoke, the rest of the crowd was in agreement. In a moment, the guild hall had a subtle atmosphere that was a shared bitter hatred for the enemy. Linley had always maintained a smile since the beginning. It looked like he really did not know that these indignant leaders did not help at all when Shadow's Nest had attacked. The tens of leaders of the forces stayed at the Guildhall till sunset before leaving unwillingly. Honestly, they really wanted to stay for a few more hours if they could. This young mage's attitude was too weird. He did not mention things from the past, and he did not even state clearly his stand on future relationships. This made the tens of leaders confused within their hearts. They had some sort of understanding about this young mage's personality. His methods were terrifyingly merciless. He was smiling today, but he could make moves tomorrow. Nobody knew if he would turn his back on them, and nobody knew if they could continue living in Gerosis. The only thing they could do was to desperately repent since they did not extend their assistance earlier, when Emerald Tower was in trouble. If they had thought about the eventual outcome, wouldn't they have been receiving the same treatment as Isra and Reuben? When the tens of leaders of the forces had left unwillingly, Linley then gave a signal to Isra and Reuben, asking them to stay. Isra's mind immediately became joyful. Haha, my hard work in these 2 months did not go to waste. Mage Felix has finally acknowledged my status as a comrade in arms. Take a seat, both of you. The reception this time was of much higher standards. Linley had personally invited both of them to the second floor, and sat down in the room that he used to stay at. It might seem casual, but there was an unspeakable intimacy. Okay, the two family heads looked at each other, and both saw delight in the other's eyes. I will not say too many words of gratitude, you two. I, Felix, am not somebody that is ungrateful. In the past 2 months, I will forever remember what you two have done for the Emerald Tower. Felix, you are too courteous. No, this is not being courteous. Linley shook his head, and his expression started to become serious. Okay. Both of you, the friendship between us has gone past the test of battle. As long as I, Felix, am here for a day, it also means that the Emerald Tower will be the closest comrade in arms for the both of you. Between comrade in arms, there should not be any secrets. I currently have a plan, please listen and see if you can give me any suggestions. What plan? When they heard this, both pricked their ears. They had known this young mage for a few months, but from the auction at the Emerald Tower to the duel in the Daylight Square, they had never seen him so serious before. If I can, I hope that before tomorrow's evening, I can make the Emerald Tower's warlock's eyes cover the entire Demon Fall Valley again. Isra drew in a breath of cold air. This young family head that was in his 20s was in control of the man's family, and spread the Gilded Rose's influence to the whole of the Felon Kingdom, yet even he thought that he'd misheard this sentence. The only thing that appeared in his head was a question: how was this possible? To regain the Demon Fall Valley before tomorrow evening was more inconceivable than Jirian losing weight. Isra had seen the strength of the Shadow's Nest before. Well-trained warriors and incomparably superior equipment. For any force that grew perceptibly from mage, it was the most lethal enemy. Back then, with the strength of the Guild of Magic, the Shadow's Nest only needed one attack, and they managed to seize control of the Demon Fall Valley. Now, they managed the whole Demon Fall Valley like a metal barrel, so how could it be taken back just because somebody wanted to? Isra swallowed his saliva with much difficulty. He wanted to disagree, but he dared not to voice it out, because he realized the young mage seated in the chair had a serious expression. Isra had never seen him so serious before. It ought to be known that back when Cromwell used a cataclysmic level 18 spell during the duel in the Daylight Square, this young mage only just frowned. Isra immediately realized that the issue was very serious. Mage Felix is serious. He really is going to attack the Demon Fall Valley before tomorrow evening. Isra rapidly shifted his body. The originally soft chair did not feel comfortable anymore. This was not a joke. The current man's family had been tied to this chariot, the Emerald Tower. They were bound together for good or ill. If the Emerald Tower were to fall, the man's family would also be affected as well. F*CK, what to do? Linley did not know what Isra could do. After all, he had already decided on this. Of course, the risk of attacking the Demon Fall Valley had already been considered by him. This issue was indeed rather troublesome. It was heavily guarded, plus there were countless traps and portals. Just a single mistake would result in death, and so, Linley had already thought of it. The risk for the Emerald Tower when attacking alone would be too big, it would have to be divided. Thus, there was a warm reception in the guild hall, and the secret meeting now in the room. But before all of this, Jirian had to be found first. Oh, yes, Isra. How's Jirian now? As to Jirian's recent news, Isra was full of confidence. In fact, even before coming to the Emerald Tower, he already had it arranged. Now that he heard Linley's question, Isra smiled confidently. President Jirian is now on the way back to the Emerald Tower. Thank you, both of you. Linley did not say much to express appreciation, but the expression on his face was unusually earnest. He even stood up and bowed towards Isra and Reuben, who were rather startled by it. This time, he was really grateful to these two big families from the bottom of his heart. If they had not helped, Jirian would most likely have been in the hands of the Shadow's Nest now. Thinking about the old man's bad temper and the way Shadow's Nest handled matters, even an idiot knew that that would definitely end in his death. Mage Felix, you are too courteous. Just as those two were overwhelmed by his special favor, there was racket heard from the guild hall. Linley hurriedly opened the room's door and saw a fat, middle-aged man walking into the guild hall while being surrounded by a group of mages. Jirian had returned. Jirian did not change a single bit even though they had not met for almost 2 months. His figure was still round, and he still cursed and swore all the time. He had just walked into the guild hall, and was already heard scolding loudly. F***ck, hasn't that fella Felix returned, why do I not see him? Did he run away with somebody's daughter? Linley could not help but roll his eyes. He scolded Jirian in his mind. Is the old man that kind of person? Felix. Jirian was old, but his eyesight was rather good. Linley had just come down the stairs, and he had been seen by Jirian. Why are you hiding upstairs? Of course I am discussing something, otherwise do you think I'm doing embroidery? Isra and Reuben took this chance to take their leave. This time, Linley did not continue asking them to stay. He just smiled, and said, oh, yes, Isra. When I was in Alana, I managed to get a recipe that could permanently raise mana. Its effects are much stronger than the arcane magic potions, but the herbs are hard to obtain. So, I thought of finding a way in Gerosis. Why don't you help spread the news, and say that I am finding a partner from the 16 forces in Gerosis to manage this potion together? If anyone is interested, they can come to the Emerald Tower tonight to talk it out. Talk it out? When Isra heard that, his mind had a click. Inwardly, Isra kept telling himself, scam, 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 this is definitely a scam. Isra was not stupid. Everyone had discussed in the room just now that they would retake the Demon Fall Valley before tomorrow evening. With just a turn, this guy was going to toss out a recipe that was stronger than the arcane magic potion. Even an idiot would know that this guy was trying to use this chance and rope in the 16 forces of Gerosis onto the Emerald Tower's war chariot. This was a trap without a doubt. Furthermore, it was a trap that one had to fall for. There was no choice, for this bait was too powerful. What did it mean when a recipe was stronger than the arcane magic potion? It was clear just by thinking about the auction that had shaken Gerosis. The price of the last 10 bottles of arcane magic potion had been raised to millions of gold coins. Without even exaggerating, this was a profit that was tens of thousands of times. Even an idiot would know that it was definitely worth it to trade anything for such a profit. Including commitment to attack the Demon Fall Valley. In an instant, Isra could not help but be uncertain. To agree or not? It was a really difficult question. Yet at this time, Reuben, who was at his side, nodded his head. I'll be here tonight. After that, he left the Emerald Tower with a blank look. Reuben's willingness had left Isra somewhat dazed. After that, he suddenly was enlightened. Oh yes, in his cleverness, he had overreached itself. So what if it was a trap? The current man's family had long been tightly tied to the Emerald Tower. Even if there was no potion recipe, and even if he did not rally to participate in this attack, would the Shadow's Nest let him off after they won? It had to be known that their spokesman in Gerosis was the Merlin family. Whether it was a trap or not, it should be left to the other forces' leaders to worry about. There was no need for people like Reuben and himself to consider it. The thing that the man's family needed to do was to follow the Emerald Tower's footsteps closely. Whatever Mage Felix wanted to do, they would do as well, be it attacking the Demon Fall Valley or exterminating the Shadow's Nest. After all, there was only a chance to fall in with the Guild of Magic, and the man's family had used this chance long ago. Funny how he had made a muddle out of this small issue. Luckily, Reuben was willing to participate. Leave it to me. Isra did not hesitate anymore. After seeing the carriages of those two leave, showing his seniority, Jirian praised, "Not too bad, kid. I haven't seen you for 2 months, and your plans have grown perceptibly." "It's nothing much." "Oh, yes, I almost forgot about business. How were the trial results after going to Alana? Did you embarrass me?" "If all goes well, people from the Supreme Council will come to Gerosis in a while. Just ask them yourself when the time comes." Not bad, Jirian smiled sheepishly before gritting his teeth, and said, "When those idiots from the Supreme Council come over, I will definitely ask them if they still dare to say that Gerosis is a magic desert." "Oh, yes, do you have an enemy called Darian?" "You've seen that idiot?" More than just seen him, Linley rolled his eyes, and recounted all the important parts about his experience in Alana, from the obstacles deliberately placed in his way by Darian to the trap at the finals. Although it was meant to be the important parts only, things happened one after another on his trip to Alana. How could it be summarized properly with just a few words? From the trials at the Shadowglen to the encounter at the Fire Plume Ridge, Linley had spent 1 hour describing just this segment before it was clearly reported. The sky was starting to get darker before the two of them started to end the conversation. Linley made use of the chance that Jirian was still shocked before he suddenly asked, "Oh, yes. When I was at Alana, I heard Kevin mention that your body's condition is really bad?" F***ck, that bastard. I already told him not to spout nonsense. The issue that he had been hiding had suddenly been exposed, so Jirian immediately became angry from embarrassment. F***ck, when I see him later, I will definitely teach him a lesson. But after he scolded Kevin, the old man sighed. "But it's okay, with my current condition, I won't have the chance to teach this bastard a lesson anymore." You don't have to be disheartened. Even though mana collapse is very troublesome, it's not like there's no solution. You have a solution? When Jirian heard that, his eyes immediately lit up. I have a potion recipe that can help recover mana that has collapsed, but the required herbs are a little troublesome. There are some that you can only come by with luck, but not by searching for it. I have already gotten the hardest one from Old Grim. I will think of a way to get the others as soon as possible. What sort of herb is that powerful? Linley pouted his lips. You wouldn't understand even if I said it. Anyway, when you have nothing to do, please keep a lookout. Especially for the one called Heart of Corrosion. It is dark red in color and about the size of a little finger. If it can be obtained, there will hope in recovering your mana. Heart of Corrosion? Why didn't you say so earlier? When Jirian heard this, he jumped up from his seat. In the guild store there. Halfway through his words, Jirian took a seat softly like a deflated ball. But it has been taken by the Shadow's Nest. It's fine, we'll just take it back. Pfft, easier said than done. Jirian's voice was somewhat colored by frustration. F***ck, this time I really have underestimated them and lost. I really don't get it. Where did Shadow's Nest, those assholes, manage to get such good equipment? I know where. You know? Yes. Linley nodded his head. If I am not mistaken, it is the famous Kingdom's arms dealer, the Marathon family, that is supporting the Shadow's Nest this time. The Marathon family? You're talking about Wilhelm, that old asshole? As expected, it is this damned shameless and scrupulous merchant. He actually messed with me for a made-up treasure map. *CK, I hope that his son does not have an anus. This, Linley scratched his head, and smiled guiltily. Whether or not his son has an anus, it doesn't matter anymore. Why? Because I accidentally killed his son in the finals. *CK. Jirian was immediately dumbfounded. The sky started to get dark, and the sound of hooves could again be heard coming from outside the Emerald Tower. More than 10 luxurious carriages were parked there, and when their passengers came out, everyone had questions on their minds. What was Mage Felix doing? Finding a partner was not something disgraceful, but why didn't he say so earlier, only to make Isra ask them over after they had gone back? Welcome, welcome, Linley was filled with smiles while inviting the crowd into the Emerald Tower. He pretended not to hear the doubts that were being circulated around them. There was no choice. In this world, there were things that could not be said out loud, just like how it was now. Linley could not possibly tell them that there was no reason to make them travel back and forth other than to whet their appetite. But then again, a little bit of doubt would not affect the mood of the crowd. In fact, nobody took this uncertainty to heart. Compared to astronomical profits, what could this little uncertainty amount to? When they walked into the Emerald Tower one by one, the gaze they directed towards Linley was as though they were looking at a gold mine. This was a trade that had tens of thousands times of profit waiting for them. The people present had personally experienced the auction back then. How could they not know how mystical the potions made by this young mage were? That was a true touch of Midas. No matter how common the herbs were, once they reached his hands, they would turn into valuable potions. To be able to be a partner of Mage Felix was a rare opportunity. The crowd believed that even if it was a 10% profit, it would definitely be a terrifyingly astronomical number. Thinking about this, the gazes they aimed at Linley immediately became warm and cordial. For this group of leaders, wealth was of extraordinary significance. With money, there would be manpower. With money, there would be equipment. With money, there would be power. It was especially so for such a chaotic place like Gerosis. As long as there was enough wealth, then they could stand out among the rest of the forces. Why was the Emerald Tower able to unite Gerosis City? Other than the miracle of this young mage and the fame of Jirian, the 3 rare mineral veins at the Demon Fall Valley were indispensable. Without those 3 rare mineral veins to supply substantial wealth, it would still be useless even with the miracles of that young mage or no matter how famous Jirian was. As the saying goes, you can't make bricks without straw. Without money, who would be willing to join the Emerald Tower? Good evening, everyone. I actually invited everyone again because I suddenly remembered something, and wanted to discuss it with everyone. After seating all of the leaders at the Guildhall and getting the apprentices to serve drinks, Linley finally spoke without omitting any details. It's getting late, so I will make it short. Simply put, I did not get anything in return when I went to Alana. I was rather lucky, and found a rather good potion recipe in the ruins of the High Elves. I heard from experienced people that this potion recipe seemed to be left behind by the High Lord, Osric. In order to boost the attractiveness of this recipe, Linley even intentionally made a small lie and used the famed name Osric. But honestly, this was rather superfluous. Osric was famous, but he was somebody from 1,300 years ago. Everything about him only existed in legends. Although the potion recipes he had passed down were full of mysteries, it was only just that. Nobody had seen it for themselves. In contrast, it was incomparable to Linley's persuasion. After all, everyone had seen it for themselves back at the auction where 10 bottles of arcane magic potion were sold for 800,000 gold coins. But it did not matter anymore. No matter where this recipe came from, it only mattered that this potion was concocted personally by Mage Felix. Just this point alone was enough for these leaders to fight for it with everything they got. Their only concern now was the effect of this recipe. Hence, the leaders simultaneously pricked up their ears with a face full of anticipation to hear him continue when his voice had just fallen. The Arcana potion is recorded within this recipe. The theory involved is rather complicated, so I will not talk about it. But in simple terms, this is a stronger version of the arcane magic potion. Linley had seen that their appetites had been whetted enough. He smiled, and said, as everyone knows, the arcane magic potion is able to raise the mana of a mage apprentice. Normally, when a level 4 apprentice uses it, there is at least a 70% chance for him to break through to level 5 and become a true mage. However, it has no effect at all on mages at level 5 and above. But it's different for the Arcana potion. It's specially made for mages below level 10. Oh my god, Linley's voice had just fallen off, and Isra had already covered his mouth. He simply could not believe what he just heard. If all of it is true, doesn't that mean that Mage Felix has the ability to train batches of magic shooters? The difference of one level between level 9 and level 10 was immeasurably vast. Out of 100 mage apprentices, most likely 80 of them could become mages, but out of 100 mages who used arcane magic potion, at most 10 could become magic shooters. This really was a difference between heaven and hearth. It was just a small gap, but it had already decided the difference in price for these two potions that had similar effects. If the price of the arcane magic potion was 1 copper, then the arcana potion would worth 1 gold coin, or even 1 diamond. This time even Jirian could not help but be stunned. The guild hall was eerily silent. There were only thumping hearts and heavy breathing. Everyone was trying to think what kind of price they would have to pay in order to obtain the dealership of the Arcana potion. Seems like everyone is rather interested in the Arcana potion. Linley was satisfied with the reaction of the crowd. Yes, 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 the leaders of the 10-20 forces fought to be the first one to nod. Everyone wanted to hug this young mage's leg and shout, "What rather interested, we really are." That's great, this business should be able to work out, Linley smiled satisfyingly. Closely after, he then frowned. But, there is a small issue. Ah? Everyone's expressions immediately froze. All of them stretched their necks and pricked up their ears, fearing they might miss out on something. This Arcana potion requires large amounts of warlock herb, and it has to be freshly plucked. Once it has left the soil for an hour, its medicinal properties will change, and then it can no longer be used for the Arcana potion. Can everyone think where in Gerosis can the warlock herb be harvested and transported here within an hour? Linley finished speaking with a troubled look. Jirian almost could not hold back his laughter. This kid was really up to no good. He was gleefully talking for a while, and his final motive was to make the other forces cannon fodder. Of course, with Jirian's shrewdness, he naturally did not expose it. Everyone sat there and thought hard for a while, before Isra broke the silence. If I remember correctly, the Demon Fall Valley should be the place that produces warlock herb. Demon Fall Valley. No, that place won't do. It's too dangerous. We only seek wealth when doing business. There's no need to get into conflict with the Shadow's Nest, those ruffians. Linley hypocritically spoke till this point, and brazenly added, why don't we do this? Let's wait for 3 to 7 years. Wait for us, the Emerald Tower, to take back the Demon Fall Valley, and then we'll resume our talk about the partnership? Isra almost vomited blood. He had always thought that he himself was shameless enough, but he did not think that he was nothing much in front of this young mage. He was obviously trying to drag the 16 forces of Gerosis along, yet he still hypocritically said something like, no, it's too dangerous. F***ck, he even dared to say something so shameless like waiting for 3 to 7 years. Why didn't he say that they'd wait for Shadow's Nest to leave first? It was not just Isra that was cursing wildly in the heart. At this time, at least 8 out of the 16 leaders were cursing in their minds. From their perspective, this was an obvious trap, and it was the type that would make people willingly jump into it. With the large incentive hanging in front, wouldn't you want to take it? The temptation of the Arcana potion was too dangerous. There was nobody present that could resist it, including Isra. At the point when Linley's voice fell, almost everyone had a decision, take. Furthermore, they were fighting to be first. How would do this work? The first that stood up was Aaron Motzi. The whole Gerosis knows that the Demon Fall Valley belongs to the Emerald Tower. On what basis can those bandits from the Shadow's Nest occupy the Demon Fall Valley? Mage Vellic, don't worry. As long as the Emerald Tower decides to take back the Demon Fall Valley, the Blood Brotherhood would assist without holding back any time. For the pride of Gerosis and for the friendship between our two families that goes way back, we, the Blood Brotherhood, will give it our all. Well said. The head of the Roland family also stood up. His face was filled with righteous indignation. Mage Vellic, as long as you say it, the Roland family will be able to send out 100 mages. If you are to attack the Demon Fall Valley, don't forget about the Roland family. Thank you for your kindness. Linley smiled, and did not say much. He was very clear what this guy was trying to say. When the Arcana potion has been concocted, don't forget about the Roland family. Yes, 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 Mage Vellic. Don't forget about me, old Odin. That's right, and us too. Mage Vellic, actually I can do it too. Aaron Motzi got the ball rolling, and the sound of the responses from the guild hall had a rippling effect. In an instant, the quiet guild hall had suddenly become very lively. Israel looked at those leaders that were fighting to be first, and then he looked at the young mage, who was full of smiles. In the end, he could not resist the temptation of the Arcana potion, and he also stood up in haste. Don't forget, there is also us, the man's family. Under the temptation of the Arcana potion, the crowd did not even put up a proper resistance. They just announced their defeat. It took less than 30 minutes, and the effects were terrifying. As for the plea that Linley had long prepared, it was not even used at all. After the thoughts of the 17 forces were united, all that was left were the details. For example, when they would attack, their roles once the attack commenced, how the rewards would be split, or how the decision which family ended up with the Arcana potion would be made. All in all, these were all negotiations with the stink of money. Linley was never good at negotiations, so he tactfully passed on the topic to Jirian, and retreated back into the pharmaceutical lab long ago. As to why he hid inside the pharmaceutical lab, it was not because he wanted to sell it after creating a hype. It was not that he did not want to meddle around after concocting the Arcana potion, it was because he could not. This thing, frankly speaking, was just a bait. It relied too heavily on the Warlock herb, and there was a need to assure the freshness of the Warlock herb. Before they took back the Demon Fall Valley, Linley could only watch even though he had the standards of a pharmaceutics guru. The thing he had to concoct now was some low-level potions, just like what he'd done before he left Gerosis back then. Actually, most of the time, potions were the same as spells. The lower the level, the more commonly they were used. Linley opened the Ring of Endless Storm, and took out herbs that he had prepared long ago. He then set up the crucible and lit a flame. After that, he worked monotonously while being loaded down with trivial details. Linley was busy all the way until the sky started to break into dawn, before he rubbed his sore neck, and walked out of the pharmaceutical lab. Jirian was standing at the door for a while, by then. When he saw Linley come out, he asked with concern, "Another sleepless night?" Yes, Linley yawned, his voice exposed the exhaustion that could not be concealed. He raised one finger, pointing at the desk that was filled with glass bottles. "These potions were prepared by me yesterday. Distribute them later. I am really tired now, and need to find a place to lie down. Just call me when it's time to leave." Scram. Linley was woken up by the knocking on the door. When he opened the door, he saw Jirian's fat face. "How's it?" "Waiting for you." Linley knew that time was limited, so he did not pack much. He just picked up the ether staff that was at the bed and wore the rune robe before he left the Emerald Tower in hurry with Jirian. This time, the Emerald Tower had departed in full force. Other than apprentices, all mages that were level 5 and above were ready for combat. When they exited the main gate of the Emerald Tower, Linley could clearly see almost 200 robed mages loading the carriages continuously. They went in the direction of the Demon Fall Valley, accompanied by dust and smoke. It was almost at the same time that there was the sound of hooves clopping suddenly coming from Gerosis City. There were countless carriages driving through the streets. Everyone that saw this exceedingly great scene could not help but open their mouths. They could not believe what they had just seen. The insignia on each of these carriages were representing the greatest 16 forces of Gerosis, from the 6 mage families to the 6 underground forces. These titans that would shed blood whenever they met usually had actually come together today to take action. The news seemed to have grown wings, and had quickly spread all over Gerosis. Before the carriages could leave the city gates, discussions had already been started within Gerosis city. Everyone was guessing what was the reason that brought these 16 forces together and what was the power that could cause them to ignore their differences that had been accumulated for hundreds of years. Could it be the Emerald Tower? This unexpected guess scared many people so much that they broke out in a cold sweat. It was especially so for the ones from the Merlin family. Evan Merlin's face was filled with anxiety. He paced around the living room for more than 10 rounds, before he gritted his teeth and called over a trusted subordinate, whispering a few orders into his ear. At this time, the carriages had already left Gerosis, and kicked up a plume of dust on the smooth highway. The carriages from the man's family were always the most luxurious and spacious. Despite an Aranmazzi that suddenly squeezed in, it actually did not feel cramped. As for why Aranmazzi did not sit in his own carriage and insisted on squeezing in with Isra, he actually had his own troubles. There was no choice. Who told him to have a subordinate that was so stupid that he blocked the Emerald Tower of all places? Furthermore, he had to do it in front of Mage Felix. Thinking about this incident, Aranmazzi could not help but break out in a cold sweat. While Mage Felix had already said that he would no longer investigate this issue, Aranmazzi was still worried. After all, Aranmazzi had seen Mage Felix approach before. If he really were to have a grudge against the Blood Brotherhood, Aranmazzi would not be able to live in peace at Gerosis anymore. Aranmazzi thought about it, and decided to discuss it with Isra. There was no choice. In the whole Gerosis, only Isra could say a thing or two to Mage Felix. I'll try my best to help you explain it, but as for whether Mage Felix is willing to forgive you, that I dare not intervene with. Thank you, thank you. Isra hesitated for a moment. Actually, you asked me to help you explain it, but why don't you do a good job? Mage Felix's vision is more sensitive than anyone can ever imagine. Completing the task he gave you is 100 times better than me helping you to explain 100 times. Oh, yes, once Aranmazzi heard this, he immediately understood. Oh, yes, why didn't I think of it from the start? Mage Felix has already given me a chance. As long as I am able to find out the actual situation of the Demon Fall Valley, won't that be better than any explanations? That's right, I'll do that. When Aranmazzi thought about this, he could no longer restrain his excitement. He hurriedly asked Isra to stop the carriage, and called over his trusted subordinates that were following behind. Spread my orders. All of the bandits in Blood Brotherhood will have to think of a way to sneak into the Demon Fall Valley. Get a clear read on the current situation within the shortest time. Remember, even if it's a magical beast's dung, you will have to find out how fresh it is. Yes. After seeing off his trusted subordinates, Aranmazzi then got into the man's family's carriage again. Leader Isra, I really have to thank you this time, no matter what. Haha, Isra only laughed and did not say much. For him, this was just a favor done at little cost. If it was the last time, Isra would definitely not tell Aranmazzi what to do. The reason was simple. It was because everyone resided in Gerosis city, and they all cast greedy eyes on the throne of number 1 force in Gerosis. But now, all of that did not matter. The existence of the Emerald Tower had long crushed their hopes. What they needed to worry about now was not standing out from among the other forces, but maintaining a good relationship with the Emerald Tower. This was the first condition for whether a force could continue surviving in Gerosis city. Oh, yes, Leader Isra. Aranmazzi hesitated for a moment before asking Isra with uncertainty. Do you have any idea why Mage Felix chose this time to attack the Demon Fall Valley? Is there an issue with this timing? Aranmazzi carefully thought over his words. You see, now it's broad daylight. We have so many people going towards the Demon Fall Valley, so wouldn't it give Shadow's Nest time to prepare? It's unimportant whether they have time to prepare. What? Aaron Motzi definitely would not be able to imagine that at this time, Jirian was also asking the same question in the Emerald Towers carriage. Let me say, what are you thinking this time? Jirian sat in the carriage. His fat and flabby body shifted around with unease. Of all times to attack, why did you choose this time, going over in broad daylight? Isn't this the same as telling those shoals from Shadow's Nest I'm coming, you'd better prepare for it? This question of yours is really too ignorant. Linley was leaning on the carriage's wall and shutting his eyes. When he heard Jirian's question, he did not even open his eyes. He just lifelessly replied, if they want to prepare, then let them. F***ck, you're so arrogant. Be careful not to lose out. Fine, then. Let us make an assumption, President. Let's say we are all bandits that are good at being stealthy and hiding. Let's say we depart in the middle of the night. Let's say we have already sneaked into the Demon Fall Valley before anyone notices us. Then, President, could you tell me what we can do at that time? What can we do? Of course we sneak and attack on them. Jirian answered in accordance with what was right. President, please be mindful. Out of the 1,000 people here today, at least 900 of them are mages. How can we launch a sneak attack on them? Additionally, don't forget that the main attack power of the Shadow's Nest comes from bandits that are good at being stealthy and hiding. If we really were to attack in the middle of the night, I wonder who would be sneaking an attack on whom. The reason why I chose this timing is to cripple their advantage by the largest degree possible. I don't believe that the bandits of the Shadow's Nest are able to stab anyone in the back in broad daylight, no matter how strong they are. After listening to your explanation, it seems to make some sense. What makes some sense? It makes a lot of sense, okay? Anyhow, just rest peacefully. Once we've reached the Demon Fall Valley, we'll bombard it with magic. When the Demon Fall Valley has been flattened by the bombardment, the battle will end. Lin Li's simple words had decided this battle's simple and crude tone. The Demon Fall Valley was situated in between Gerosis and the Forest of Whispers. Heading north along the highway coming out of Gerosis for over 40 minutes, a short forest could be seen. Following the border of this short forest and heading forward for a few kilometers, the beautiful and bountiful valley could be seen. It was just that the owner of the Demon Fall Valley had currently changed from the Emerald Tower to the Shadow's Nest. Under the winding mountain range and in between the luscious greenery, there was a motley plain of tan. Breathing and shouting were continuously heard from the mountain caves. This was accompanied by the monotonous dang, dang, dang sounds, adding a tinge of cruelty to the Demon Fall Valley. There were carts coming out from the cave's entrances occasionally, and the carts were filled with a dense and heavy load of black-colored ore. Even though the Felon Kingdom was the least advanced in regard to mining technology, this was still the most primitive form, where humans were pushing carts to transport the ore. Hurry, you damn lazy pigs. You only know how to eat and be lazy. Isn't food that costs 5 copper enough to keep you full for the whole day? You still move so slowly while pulling carts with so little ore. Do you want me to use a whip to wake you up? There were a few supervisors walking around the cave's entrances, the whips in their hands danced, giving off cracks. They were the lowest-ranking members of the Shadow's Nest. It was only natural that they did not get comfortable tents or have a relaxing patrol duty. Those were the privileges of the core members. Low-ranking members that had only joined for less than 3 years like them could only accompany the slaves under the blazing sun. The only privilege they had was only to use the leather whips in their hands. The emaciated slaves moved the carts strenuously, dripping their sweat all over the luscious grass. In a further place, there were a few simple and crude furnaces that were set up temporarily. The order they had received was to refine as much mithril ore into mithril ingots as possible within the shortest time. Ronald was 45 years old this year. His early life of exile had caused him to lose an eye, but Ronald never regretted it once. It was because he had traded this eye for the control of the whole Shadow's Nest. The current him now stood on top a sentry tower, using his remaining eye to overlook the whole Demon Fall Valley. Under the torture of the blazing sun and leather whips, there were slaves collapsing at the side occasionally. Some struggled and stood up, while some never got back up again. Ronald watched everything coldly. For him, slaves were merely expendable goods. Their value could not even be compared to a refined mithril ingots. The only issue was that if too many slaves died, it'd disrupt the mining process. The output recently is not up to standard. I think we have to purchase another batch of slaves. Yes, the number of supervisors would have to increase as well. These good-for-nothings are too lazy, they need more whips to greet them. Although he was complaining, his tone carried a sense of pride that could not be concealed. It was hard to blame Ronald for being proud. 10 years ago, he had developed his wild ambitions within the Shadow's Nest, but his ambition was hampered by barren lands. It wasn't until 2 months ago, when the Demon Fall Valley had been taken over, that he finally obtained sufficient capital. The enormous yield of the mithril ore had brought about a terrifying advantage for the Shadow's Nest. Probably not long later, he would be able to have an elite force armed to their teeth. When it reached that point, what could Gerosis amount to? My wild ambition is to spread Shadow's Nest's influence throughout the whole Felon Kingdom. Even His Majesty would have to hand over protection fee if he were to venture into my area of influence. Ronald, don't count your chickens before they hatch. The real danger has yet to arrive. You need to prepare for battle. The one standing behind Ronald was an old man with a frail voice. He was wearing a black robe, and his hood was pulled over. His face was thoroughly serious, and it was only under the shadow of the hood that his eyes had a sharp gleam to them. "Haha, you are too careful, my old friend." Ronald's laughter spread far and wide. His only eye was filled with complacency. If it was the Emerald Tower from 2 months ago, I might worry for a bit. But now, they no longer have this right. Jirian is just a piece of trash now. When we burned the Emerald Tower, he did not even dare to emerge from his shell. Do you know, my old friend, that fatty is afraid now? Haha, he is afraid now. He is afraid of Shadow's Nest's strength, and he is even more afraid of our powerful ally. Jirian is not the only mage in the Emerald Tower. Mage? Are you joking? My old friend, didn't you always tell me that in the world of magic, level is everything? An archmage can easily kill tens of magic shooters. Now that we, Shadow's Nest, have you, an archmage, other than Jirian fully recovering his powers, who else in the Emerald Tower can be your opponent? Jirian? So what if he recovers his powers? He is not the one I'm worried about. Oh? Ronald could not help but be afraid for a while. His only eye was filled with shock. Could it be that there's another archmage in the Emerald Tower other than Jirian? My old friend, don't joke with me. If there had been such a person, then wouldn't we have been unable to take over the Demon Fall Valley? I'm not sure if that person is an archmage, but there is one thing I am sure of. If that person had been around when we attacked the Demon Fall Valley, then even if we were able to take over the Demon Fall Valley, we would have paid a very heavy price. There is really such a person? Yes. The old man's voice was very soft, but Ronald always felt that this old friend of his sounded very ghastly for some unknown reason. His name is Felix. Ah? When the ghastly voice was heard, Ronald had a shock. After that, he suddenly laughed loudly. Ha ha ha. Oh my God. I was wondering whom you were talking about. So the person you were talking about is that pharmacist from the Emerald Tower? Stop joking. Indeed, my old friend, I admit that pharmacist is powerful. He is able to concoct the arcane magic potion and wild elixir at such a young age. But so what? He is only 20 years old. Even if he were to study magic from the day he was born, he only has the power of a magic shooter now at best. With your powers, you can turn him into ashes just by moving your fingers. Let me say this, what is wrong with you recently? You become timid after encountering some obstacles. Even a 20-year-old kid makes you scared. Ronald's words were very rude, especially so for that last sentence. It was blatant derision, but the old man seemed not have heard it. His eyes just stared into the mountain range in the distance. After a long pause, he finally let out a soft sigh. Ronald, you have never seen that Felek before. You have no idea how terrifying he is. If it was any other magic shooter, I would probably tell you no problem, he is not my match, but this Felek is really different. I am not confident. I really do not have any confidence at all. Why? Why? The old man suddenly laughed, but this laughter was indeed a little miserable. It was hoarse and heavy, just like the sound produced when two shards of glass were rubbed against each other. Do you know that when this Felek was only level 8, he could already resist my mental strength suppression? Do you dare believe it? A level 8 mage resisting an archmage's mental suppression. Ronald, you haven't seen it before, so you won't be able to imagine how terrifying he is. Say no more. Maybe it was because the old man's words were too direct, but Ronald's voice was rather rude. He gripped the sides of the sentry tower, and his gaze fell upon the continuous chain of mountains. Over there was the only entrance to the Demon Fall Valley. If it really is as you said, that Felek can go against an archmage, what of it? Could it be that you think that the Emerald Tower still has the guts to come to the Demon Fall Valley again? Could it be that you think that they really have the ability to take back the Demon Fall Valley? It's not that I, Ronald, am boasting. If the Emerald Tower really dares to come to the Demon Fall Valley again, I would eat up this sentry tower, F***ck. Ronald's voice had not even fallen when his gaze suddenly froze. After that, a chain of vulgarities was spewed by him. It was because he clearly saw that there was a cloud of dust in the continuous chain of mountains in the distance. Based on years of experience, Ronald could tell with one look that this was a battalion with more than 1,000 men. F***ck, this really is like seeing a ghost. A battalion with more than 1,000 men coming over to the Demon Fall Valley? Could it be that they did not know that this place belongs to our Shadow's Nest, and barging in without an invitation equates to declaration of war? Could it be the Emerald Tower? This thought had just appeared in his mind, but Ronald had already denied it. Of course, this was not because he wanted to eat up the sentry tower, but because he believed that the Emerald Tower could not rally so many people. Even by thinking with his feet, he knew this terrifying number was definitely not something that the Emerald Tower could gather. Not a single force in the whole Gerosis could summon so many men, not to mention the Emerald Tower. Unless they came together. 1,000 thoughts appeared in Ronald's mind. He already did not bother trying to think which one was the most possible one. He hastily reached out with his hand into his clothes, and pulled out a magic beacon. At the same time, he pulled the fuse of the magic signal. Afterwards, a red flare shot into the sky. Bang! The red flare exploded in the air. In an instant, dazzling red light covered half of the Demon Fall Valley. Enemy attack, enemy attack. Come out, all of you bastards. Prepare for battle. Ronald, hoarse shouting, spread far and wide from the sentry tower. A large number of the members of the Shadow's Nest came out from their tents continuously. All their faces were filled with confusion. There were even people mumbling, F***ck, it's broad daylight. Attack my A**s. After that, they saw the brilliant red flare, boom. The loud sound was like a bomb that exploded above Ronald's head. At that moment, Ronald really felt like his head had been bombed. That feeling was like a large and invisible hand had grabbed onto his heart and squeezed tightly. After that, it was like a surge of cold air came from beneath his feet. There were flares all over the sky. Coupled with the searing heat, they made it feel like a plague was surging towards the guard towers. The power of the flaming storm was the most incisive at this point. Ronald was only stunned for a moment, and the sky full of flares already surged towards him. When he realized it, and tried to retreat, it was already too late. He could but watch as the flares swallowed the guard tower. In that second, Ronald seemed to have heard a hasty chanting. After that, the old man behind him raised his magic staff, and the large gem embedded at the top instantly gave of a dazzling light. In the blink of an eye, a gale swept past. When these two magical forces collided, even space seemed to have been distorted. While the gale swept past and the blazing flames let up for a moment, the old man seized the chance to grab Ronald's collar. Jump! The two of them seemed to have jumped off the guard tower at the same time. The old man hastily chanted while he was midair. With the support of the levitation spell, the two of them landed softly on the ground like leaves. Ronald was a level 15 warrior. After the initial shock, he quickly regained composure a high-level warrior should have. When his feet had just landed on the ground, his crimson-red combat energy had started to spread. It protected himself and the old man behind him. With the sky full of roaring flares, they could no longer take a step forward. It really is him. The old man did not mention any names, but Ronald knew that him referred to the Emerald Tower's Felek. What? What do we do? After thinking about the danger just now, Ronald could not help but break out in a cold sweat. This time, he really did not dare not to trust what the old man said. Ronald swallowed his saliva with difficulty. The gaze from his only eye showed that he was panic-stricken. Gather up the forces. We must counterattack as soon as possible. I will try my best to buy you time. After the old man said that, another hasty recitation was heard. With the support of the levitation spell, he was like a black arrow, flying towards that chain of mountains. Linley stood at spacious flat ground. He observed the Demon Fall Valley while hastily reciting. At his back, there were at least 100 mages gathered. Furthermore, there were countless mages wearing robes in a location further away. They rushed over one by one. At this time, the majority of them were looking at this 20-years-old young mage with fear. Almost all of the mages in Gerosis had come here this time. Other than the members of the Emerald Tower, there were at least 500 men that were deployed by the forces of Gerosis. Within the past few months, they more or less heard from their own leaders that there was a genius in the Emerald Tower. A genuine genius. His talent was unsurpassed, and his strength was immense. At the same time, he had a deep knowledge of pharmaceutics. Almost every praise could be used describing this genius. It was especially so for those like Isra that knew well how powerful Linley was. They gave out warnings repeatedly before setting off. Don't ever go against the words of Mage Felek or question Mage Felek's decisions. Otherwise, even the magic potion may not save you. After the repeated warnings, the name Felek had long been etched deep inside everyone's minds. It could be said that none of the hundreds of mages present were strangers to the name Felek. Other than a lucky few, almost nobody had seen him take action with their own eyes. For most of the mages, everything were just rumors. Those that were more timid had maintained a peculiar reverence for him from the start, viewing him as though he was a demon from the abyss. Those that were braver had thought otherwise. They had always felt that no matter how powerful this Felek was, he was just an overrated young genius. But now, be it those braver or those more timid, they had a thorough understanding of the prowess of this young mage. There was incomparable strength and violence. In just that short instant, he had already cast almost 10 flaming storms. The casting speed was fast, and the execution was powerful. It was simply terrifying. Almost all of the mages could not tolerate it, and swallow their saliva. They used a gaze normally designated to view monsters as they stared at that young mage who was reciting incantations. All of them could not help but mumble to themselves, is this something AF * King Human can do? Could it be that this guy's a magical beast that's wearing human skin? Weird, why is this guy so familiar? After Linley had released the 10th flaming storm, he took a breather. After that, he saw that there was a familiar silhouette flying from afar. Linley could not help but feel uncertain. He pointed at the familiar silhouette flying over to him and inquired Jirian, who was beside him. Jirian was laughing while watching Linley cast spells. Each time a flaming storm was cast, Jirian's smile would get more sheepish. When the 10th flaming storm was released, the fatty had already turned around and looked at the leaders of the 16 forces with a gaze that was up to no good. The meaning behind his gaze was just too obvious. Take a look, just take a look, this is the pride of the Emerald Tower. All you of trash actually dared to be arrogant when the Emerald Tower was down and out. Do you want to end up like Shadow's Nest? Nobody wanted to, so, the leaders of the 16 forces buried their heads. Nobody dared to look at Jirian. It was not a joke. To look straight at this fatty at this time? What if he took it as a challenge? This damned fatty was still gullible, but what if Mage Felix took it seriously? After scanning through the faces of the leaders of the 16 forces, Jirian finally gave a satisfied smile, but he only smiled midway when he heard Lin Li's voice from the side. After that, Jirian's smile suddenly froze. F*CK, that's old Merlin. What? Lin Li had a shock, and looked at the silhouette flying fast in the sky. The more he looked, the more familiar it was. It was the same magical wave, and the same figure. The only thing that was different would be that he seemed to be more frail as compared to back then in Gerosis. But, the magical wave being emitted from his body seemed to be stronger than before. It really is old Merlin. Nonsense, I have fought with old Merlin for decades. Even if he were to turn into ashes, I would still recognize this old man. Jirian finished his rambling, and then started to frown. F*CK, this old man. I knew that he wouldn't disappear so easily. As expected, this old man had actually teamed up with the Shadow's Nest. I told you so, where else could that idiot, Evan, get such balls? He knew that he could not afford to offend the Emerald Tower, but he actually dared to go against me every time. So, it was actually this old man pulling the strings behind the scenes. This time, Jirian was really troubled. Old Merlin was one of the strongest mages in Gerosis. Even if it was Jirian with his full powers, he had not been able to overcome this old man after fighting for tens of years. The only time he won was when he relied on the awakening potion that Felix gave him. F*CK, this time, it really is going to be troublesome. My mana has collapsed. Where do we find an archmage to take him out? I'll go talk to him. What are you going to talk to him about? Jirian had not finished speaking when the expression on his face froze. He stood there with a dazed look, his mouth was wide open as though he had seen a mouse rape an elephant. F*CK, what the hell? Bastard, when did you break through to the Archmage realm? Why is it that I did not know of it? You didn't ask me, either. Lin Li dropped that sentence, and flew over towards old Merlin with the support of the levitation spell. Fook, this bastard is getting more and more out of hand. He actually hid it from me. Jirian's tone was anguished, but his fat face was already smiling jovially. This was truly a surprise within a surprise. No matter how well informed he was, he would never imagine that this kid had already broken through to the Archmage realm after going to Alana for 2 months. He really is an Archmage. Isra had swallowed his saliva. Yesterday, back at the Emerald Tower, he had already faintly felt it, but he just did not dare to believe it. Now, he had seen it with his own eyes. Isra had no choice but to admit that there were always some people in this world that could not be measured by common sense, profound knowledge and unsurpassed talent. Many times, they could only be described as monsters. As for the hundreds of mages that came to the Demon Fall Valley this time round, all of their jaws were wide open. If those 10 flaming storms had made them dumbfounded earlier, then this levitation spell almost scared them to death. Fook, an archmage in his 20s. Was there anything more monstrous in this world? When the crowd was discussing, Lin Li had already flown to the sky above the Demon Fall Valley. It's been a while, Mage Felix. This pair of young and old archmages had stopped at the same time when the distance between them was 100 meters. Old Merlin's voice sounded more frail than when he had been at Gerosis. It's been a while, Merlin family head Matthew. I don't know if I can ask what is the purpose for Mage Felix to come over to the Demon Fall Valley today. You're amusing, Patriarch Matthew. So many of us have come to the Demon Fall Valley, of course we're here to retrieve some items. Do we look like we are on a holiday? Lin Li maintained a polite smile throughout the conversation, while his words remained mild. Anyone would have thought he was chatting with an old friend. Only old Merlin thought otherwise. He was hovering less than 100 meters away from his opponent, and could clearly feel the strong magical wave coming from the young mage. It was an incredibly powerful force, and old Merlin could not help feeling trepidation despite having prepared himself for it. This force was too strong, and made him feel out of breath. It felt like he was facing a huge dragon even though he was still situated at the outer boundary of the magical waves. My God! Old Merlin's heart sank as he knew that this young mage had grown beyond what he could imagine. Even though he'd already known of this young mage's astounding talent back in Gerosis, and was aware that he would reach a scary heights one day, old Merlin never knew that that day would come so fast. It had merely been months ago that he had been a level 8 mage, yet now he had become an existence that old Merlin was no match for. Sigh. Old Merlin sighed quietly, and for the first time felt like he had made a mistake. If he had known that this would happen, he would have kept Cromwell in check instead of letting him mess with the Emerald Tower, and all the more kept him from messing with this scary young mage. Then, all of this would not have happened. While he could not change the fact that the Emerald Tower ruled over Gerosis now, he could have continued to live there, and Cromwell would not have died in the Daylight Square. But it was too late for anything now. The Merlin family had fallen, Cromwell was dead, and even he himself had to reside in the Shadow's Nest. All of this had already happened. The regret in old Merlin's eyes faded as soon as it appeared. When he raised his head again, his eyes were filled with determination. It was too late to say anything now. He had to defeat this young mage and fend off Emerald Tower's attack before he reinstated the glory of the Merlin family with the aid of the Shadow's Nest. This was his only chance, even if it had but an almost negligible possibility of success. The magical waves from both of them exploded almost at the same time, and it felt like a strong wind swept past at that moment. Their black cloaks were caught in the wind as magical waves started surging, and the air in the Demon Fall Valley began to feel volatile. Old Merlin's chanting was unusually throaty, as even he had to admit that he did not have an ounce of confidence going against this scary young mage. This was perhaps the least confident old Merlin had been in a fight in his whole life. Even when he faced Jirian in Gerosis, he always believed that all he needed was a stroke of luck. Now, however, he knew he needed a lot more than just luck. That was because he now saw an aqua-colored light coming from the young mage. Old Merlin knew that it was a water shield, one that was coming from a level 16 archmage. Linley was not in the least bit concerned about what old Merlin was thinking at that moment, as he was concentrating on his chanting under the protection of the water shield. The chanting of a chilling touch spell began flowing in the air. Both finished their chanting nearly at the same time. One was a chilling touch, while the other was a flaming storm. In a split second, the two contrasting forces shone blindingly as they were suspended in the sky above the Demon Fall Valley. Amid floating snowflakes and flying sparks, one was shining a crystal blue, while the other was a fiery red. The two lights twined together, forming an almost ethereal array of colors. They were both archmages, and their understanding of magic way surpassed that of other mages. The speed at which they used magic would look unbelievably fast to anyone else, as they had already exchanged a few attacks in the blink of an eye. Whether it was old Merlin, who had already enjoyed decades of fame, or the young mage, who had taken the whole of Gerosis by surprise, both showcased exemplary capabilities in the fight. This was easily the fight of the highest standard in Gerosis in the last few decades, as every mage stared in awe at the two figures moving rapidly in the sky. The heck, an archmage indeed. Jirian gulped as he could clearly see now that the youngster hovering in the sky above the Demon Fall Valley had indeed reached the realm of an archmage. That levitation spell had nothing to do with magical equipment nor pharmacy, it was purely the strength of an archmage. And one of level 16 too. Jirian felt slightly enraged when he thought of that. Damn it, on what grounds was he able to achieve this? On what grounds is it that I have been studying magic for decades, yet I remain a level 15 archmage, while this rascal merely spent a couple of months in Alana and managed to reach level 16? Matthew and I had been of equal standing when we fought, but he isn't able to retaliate against this rascal at all. How is that possible? What kind of logic is this? Jirian cursed angrily as he vented his anger on the bandits of the Shadow's Nest. After Linley flew up to fight old Merlin, the authority to command the rest naturally fell onto Jirian. The middle-aged fatty started waving his hands wildly as he gestured for the mages behind him to attack the Demon Fall Valley again and again. A moment later, the Demon Fall Valley was filled with smoke as the torrential magical elements rushed into the Demon Fall Valley as though they were water bursting through a floodgate. Storms, flames, lightning, and snow, everything seemed to boil over at once as waves and waves of magical attacks hit the Demon Fall Valley, not leaving even an inch of land untouched. Once hundreds of mages had a geographical advantage in the fight, the explosion of strength coming from all of them at once was definitely nothing short of terrifying. An endless amount of magic rained down from the cliff, and covered the whole of Demon Fall Valley as towers were burned into ash and tents were sealed in ice. As for the members of the Shadow's Nest who were busy running for their lives, many of them were beheaded before they even realized it. This was a brutal and violent battle, without any chance for surprise attacks or turnarounds. Everyone fought honestly, unleashing all magic they were capable of. This was a simple process that even a level 5 mage apprentice would not find challenging, but when there were hundreds of mages doing the same thing, it turned into an incomparably scary sight. This is ridiculous. Ronald held on desperately to his combat energy, and was scarcely able to protect himself from being injured by magic, but his men were falling down one by one. There was no choice, since the attacking magic was too dense, and there were no corners for him to hide in the Demon Fall Valley. The only thing he could do was to watch them fall one by one. Ronald did think of counterattacking, sending a group of bandits to try and sneak amongst the mages to create a distraction by stabbing them. This had worked for him when he attacked the Demon Fall Valley. Unfortunately, everything that seemed to work in the past only proved to be a laughable failure today. The 30 bandits had met with a mass massacre just when they left the exit of the valley. Hundreds of wind blades sliced through the air, and then through their bodies as well, leaving the ground covered in corpses and blood in a flash. Ronald could not cry even if he tried now. He really wanted to know who had thought of such a useless idea for an attack. Damn it, did he think this was child's play? He dared to stand at the entrance of the valley and use such laughable tactics just because he had hundreds of mages under his command. Damn it, do you even know what tactics are, how to make use of troop formations, and how to round up your enemy? Damn it, he knows nothing of it, yet he is able to suffocate me like that. Ronald was so angry, he coughed up blood as he could only watch as the damned mages burned the Demon Fall Valley into ashes. At this point, Ronald really had no way out. The only thing he could count on was old Merlin. He hoped that old Merlin would kill that Felek as soon as possible and then quickly come and help him. Without the help of old Merlin's magic, his bandits and warriors were unable to even raise their heads under the mage's suppression. Actually, old Merlin really wanted to go and help him. Unfortunately, he was unable to help even himself now, so how could he think about helping Roland? Jirian was vicious indeed. Old Merlin was able to resist Felek at the start of the fight, but Jirian could already tell that this archmage who was comparable to himself would surely be no match for Felek. And truth was, Linley only spent a minute to prove Jirian right. Just as old Merlin fired a fireball, only for the water shield to spin, Linley reacted differently from what he had done earlier. Instead of retaliating immediately, he manipulated the levitation spell to retreat quickly, then used a mana retroaction. Oh, no. Old Merlin's mouth opened just as the expression on his face suddenly froze. At this moment, old Merlin felt a chill rise on his back, making him feel as though he had fallen into an ice hole. Never had he thought that there existed such a horrifying technique of casting spells. It was like the legendary ability, the prophecy. From the moment he started chanting to the moment his mana flow was cut off, the whole process could not have lasted more than 1/10 of a second. It was as if everything had been planned. Old Merlin suddenly paled just as his flow of mana was cut off. While the fight had been exhausting, at least neither of them was able to best the other. Now that mana retroaction had been used, it seemed that this would no longer be the case. Old Merlin fixed his gaze on Linley as sweat covered his forehead. The only thing he could do now was to bet on his last resort. He retreated nearly 10 meters using the levitation spell as he quickly retrieved a scroll from his pocket. What the hell? The middle-aged fatty, who had been excitedly commanding the mages, cursed suddenly when old Merlin revealed the scroll, taking all the mages by surprise. "Damn it, this despicable old fellow!" While other mages might not recognize the scroll, how could Jirian not? That was the Psychic Storm scroll that the Merlin family had bought cheaply from them when the Emerald Tower was at its lowest. Even though the Emerald Tower had unified Gerosis now, when Jirian saw the Psychic Storm scroll, he still couldn't help but swear it had been one of the most valuable magical items in Emerald Tower's collection. There was a level 18 Psychic Storm magic transcribed on it, but the scariest thing was that the scroll had been specially treated, and could be triggered by any archmage. As long as there was sufficient mana, one could maintain the effect of the Psychic Storm until the last trace of their mana had been burned. Damn it, Felix is in trouble. In his panic, Jirian really wanted to use a levitation spell to fly over to the Demon Fall Valley and stop old Merlin. Unfortunately, his magical force was broken, and even using a wind blade was too much for him. At this point, the only thing Jirian could do was to cup his hands around his mouth toward Linley, who was chanting in a low voice, and shout desperately, "Quick, Felix, stop that old fogey, don't let him open the scroll." Unfortunately, Linley could not hear him at all as he focused on chanting the Pyroblast spell. Then, the scroll in the hands of old Merlin shone a dazzling gold. In an instant, his whole being was shrouded, and if one looked closely, they would see a golden thread glimmering between the two archmages. This was a sign of guiding magic. "It's over." Jirian's fat face suddenly became pale. He was painfully aware of the power of the Psychic Storm. Once this dazzling golden light fell on a mage, it would swallow their power within 10 seconds. Even a mage with nearly unlimited power like Linley would not be spared by this level 18 magic. The only difference was that it might take a little longer, but what difference did that make? Whether it was 10 seconds or 20 seconds, as long as old Merlin's guidance was not interrupted, his magic would be completely swallowed sooner or later, and the longer it took, the more pain he would feel. The only way out was to interrupt old Merlin's guidance. However, the Psychic Storm was a level 18 magic, so how could it be easy to interrupt? One should know that in addition to burning mana, the Psychic Storm itself was able to restrict magic. Under the cover of the Psychic Storm, even someone as strong as Felix would not have an opportunity to cast a spell. How would one interrupt old Merlin's guide without magic? By poking with their finger? Then Linley answered Jirian's question with a simple action. He did not seem flustered at all, despite being covered in the golden light, and even had a smile on his face. It was as though his rapidly depleting mana had no effect on him. At this moment, Linley only did one thing, which was to gently lift the ether staff in his hand. At that point in time, Jirian thought he saw the gem at the end of the magic staff glow a faint yellow. Then, the golden light suddenly dimmed, and disappeared like snow in the sun. Ah! Old Merlin sighed under Jirian's shocked stare, for he knew that he had wasted the last chance to save himself. He had prided himself on his mana, but it now seemed pathetic in front of this level 16 archmage. Old Merlin could neither retaliate nor escape, and even the Psychic Storm scroll, which was his last resort, only seemed like child's play to his opponent. How unfortunate, Patriarch Matthew. Linley still had an easy smile on his face as he chanted quickly. The moment the golden light vanished, a pyroblast was sent out. Boom! The sound was so loud and intense that even people standing hundreds of meters away heard it clearly, and sparks flew as the flames burned strongly. Having lost the protection of his elemental shield, old Merlin seemed unusually weak under the effect of the pyroblast, and burst into flames just as it hit him. There was no struggle and no cry for help as he landed in the Demon Fall Valley like a ball of fire. Jirian looked at the falling fireball as he was suddenly filled with mixed emotions. Matthew had single-handedly led the Merlin family to glory, and was once ranked alongside him as the strongest mage in Gerosis. Yet, he had now met with a sudden death. In the past, Jirian would never have believed Matthew would die in this manner. The magical attack on the cliff suddenly stopped as all eyes were fixed on the burning ball of fire, especially those of the leaders of the 16 forces. It was a mind-numbing scene, and frightened them all. The patriarch of the Merlin family, the same old Merlin who was as powerful as Gerion, was not capable of retaliating against Mage Felix. The whole battle had not been shocking at all, as though it was logical for this young man to have easily killed the strongest mage of Gerosis. Damn it, retreat. The death of old Merlin was the last straw that finally caused Ronald to collapse. Now that the entire Demon Fall Valley was under a magical attack, and the most powerful mage under him had died suddenly, Ronald knew that he had lost, and it was an utter defeat at that. Retreating was the only option they had now. While the Demon Fall Valley was prosperous, it was not worth the lives of all his men. No matter how strong the Shadow's Nest was, it was no match for the entire city of Gerosis, not to mention that damned Mage Felix. Damn it, how did this monster come about? Not only did he bring all the mages in Gerosis City, he also killed old Merlin so effortlessly. Was he really not a legendary magical beast disguised as a human? A pity that Ronald did not have much time left to think. At the same time old Merlin fell down in a burning ball of fire, Ronald ordered a retreat. The order had just been given, but everyone already reacted. Hundreds and thousands of bandits emerged from all directions, rushing to the Forest of Whispers like game chased by predators. The whole scene was both chaotic and pathetic as infighting and trampling broke out during their escape. Who knew how many weaker bandits had died at the feet of their companions? Trying to escape? Linley hovered quietly in the sky as he stared at their every action with an almost cruel gaze. Having brought so many men, surely he wanted to do more than just chase the Shadow's Nest away, no? In this world, there would never be a shortage of ambitious forces. They might have come across the Shadow's Nest today, but who was to say that they wouldn't meet another one called the Light's Nest tomorrow? Linley had had a lot of experience dealing with such forces. The only way to deal with them was to truly teach them a lesson, one that they would remember distinctly for hundreds of years and still feel the pain like it was only just yesterday. Only then would those who plotted against the Emerald Tower think twice before they act and realize that they could not actually afford to pay the price of offending the Emerald Tower. For some reasons, Linley felt like he was suddenly able to empathize with Osric as he hovered in the air. However, he was not anxious to act, as he merely followed behind the defeated fighters of the Shadow's Nest using the levitation spell. He remembered Aranmotzi had told him before that there was a fast-flowing river not far ahead from here. When he escaped from the Demon Fall Valley, Ronald was already covered in dirt and wounds as his hair stuck up in all directions. The eye patch over his blind eye had been ripped off, leaving a hollow exposed to the air, sending a chill down the back of anyone who saw it. Luckily, he did manage to escape. Ronald wiped the sweat on his forehead as he felt slightly relieved to hear the sound of water flowing come from the distance. As long as he crossed the Black River, he would enter the Forest of Whispers, which had a difficult terrain and dense vegetation, a perfect spot for an ambush. The Shadow's Nest had been operating for decades, and the mages of the Emerald Tower would not dare barge into this place even if they had an advantage in numbers. As long as he was patient and waited a few years for his strength to recover, he might still have a chance to take back the Demon Fall Valley. The only unfortunate thing was that he had paid an unbelievably high price in this battle. The expensive traps they'd laid down did not even come into use, as the land was burned right from the start of the battle. Over 100 core members of the Shadow's Nest had died today too, and Ronald felt his heart clench at the very thought of it. He had spent a decade painstakingly building up these relationships, only to lose so many of them today. Of course, what truly pained Ronald was old Merlin's death. He was a true archmage, much stronger than a level 15 warrior like him in terms of combat, and a powerful figure he would never have been able to recruit if not for the sudden fall of the Merlin family. The truth was that old Merlin's strength in magic was of utter importance to the Shadow's Nest, as many fights that were too difficult for them previously suddenly became way too simple with his help. Especially so during the attack on Emerald Tower, with old Merlin helping them secretly, they were able to take down the tower which had remained unbeatable for centuries, and did so without shedding a drop of blood. Only, old Merlin was now dead. Who knew how long it would take him to find another archmage? After all, not every force had one. Furthermore, not everyone was as lucky as Emerald Tower to be able to find an archmage in his 20s, and such a terrifyingly powerful one too. Damn it, why don't I have such luck? Ronald could not help glaring at his men when he thought of this. Damn it, it's all because of these retards. We already took down Emerald Tower, which was unbeatable for centuries, yet these retards still could not find me what I was looking for. Damn it, if I'd found what I wanted, would I have lost like I did today? That big shot from Alana had promised me to fulfill my requests for any equipment or manpower as long as I gave him that thing. Damn it, if I had a few archmages, would Emerald Tower still dare to act so high and mighty? Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything. Ronald shook these annoying thoughts away as he continued dragging his weary body towards the Black River. It was right ahead, the fast-flowing water splashed against the river banks, causing vapor to hover in the air. 10 large vessels were docked at the bank overgrown with grass. They had been left behind here after the Shadow's Nest's attack on the Demon Fall Valley. Ronald could not be happier about his decision to do this, as he would undoubtedly lose over half his men if these 1,000 or so defeated fighters had to swim across the Black River now. BB boss. As they neared the Black River and Ronald was about to order his men to board the vessels, one of his trusted men suddenly froze. Damn it, shut up. Ronald was feeling annoyed, and felt an unexplainable anger rising as he listened to him stutter again and again without getting his message across. If not because they were on the run, he would give him a slap. Then, the sight of the figure hovering in the sky immediately quenched his anger. Ronald leaped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and ran towards the Black River with all his might as he frantically waved at his men to follow. Quick, 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 if you want to live, you'd better get on that damn boat. Get on the boat? Linley quietly hovered above the Black River using the levitation spell as he watched Ronald shout with all he had as the members of Shadow's Nest scrambled to board the vessel. He gripped the ether staff tightly as the light yellow dragon's eye glowed brightly. Strong magical waves appeared from the mageweth that covered the staff. The mana Linley infused into the staff was repeatedly magnified and purified before it was ultimately released in its purest form. The complex and lengthy chanting was like flowing water, mysterious and solemn. Endless amount of ice magic element was tossing around above the Black River as thick clouds covered the sky as if before a storm. Lightning flashed from time to time, resembling a golden snake as it tore through the sky and coated the gloomy clouds with a layer of gorgeous gold. The Black River continued to flow quickly as waves crashed against the river banks again and again. Coupled with the vapor that shrouded the place, it was what anybody would imagine doomsday to be. Linley's chanting grew faster and faster. It's over, Ronald's gaze slackened. The figure holding the staff in the sky was like a scythe-wielding Grim Reaper who made snow fall in July. The bone-chilling cold made Ronald's heart seize up as he only then realized that he had been overly optimistic. The goal of this young mage was not to chase them out of the Demon Fall Valley, but to kill them. It would be a massacre capable of shaking any force down to their core. It's over, everything's over now. Ronald stood and stared blankly at the sky as his gaze was filled with fear and hopelessness. The chanting flowed like water as Linley stared at the Black River with a gaze void of mercy. As the last of the spells was finally finished with a loud cry, a strong gust of wind swept by, and caused heavy snow to fill the entire Black River. In an instant, the whole world turned white, and neither the members of the Shadow's Nest scrambling for their lives nor the 10 large vessels could be seen. Even the rushing river came to a standstill as heaven and earth seemed to have become one at that moment. Besides white, there was no other color in the world. Then, the world became quiet. Strong wind blew above the Black River as the young mage, with a presence like that of the Grim Reaper, continued hovering quietly in the sky. A deathly silence filled the surrounding as nothing besides the howling wind could be heard. The first batch of mages to reach Black River after cutting through the Demon Fall Valley only appeared after 10 minutes, and what they saw was enough to haunt them for a lifetime. My God! A young mage from the man's family was the first to reach the river bank, and he could not help letting out a terrified whimper as soon as he saw what had happened here. Then, he sat down weakly. Followed by the second, the third, and then the fourth. Almost 1,000 mages stood frozen on the spot, looking uncannily similar to the 1,000 or so ice sculptures on the surface of the Black River. Downy flakes of snow continued to fall as the whistling of blowing wind could be heard from time to time. 1,000 or so eerily lifelike ice sculptures stood quietly. Some of them had just boarded the vessel, while the others were fighting to get to it. Rays of sunlight fell upon them, and made the crystal-clear sculptures shine unusually beautifully. At that moment, the beauty and cruelty of the situation had fused seamlessly. As they stared at the crystal-like sculptures of ice, almost everyone felt a chill running down their spines. The leaders of the 16 forces looked at each other as they saw fear and shock in each other's eyes. There was only thought in everyone's mind. My God, this is a massacre. Indeed, this was a massacre. Including Ronald, not one of the over 1,000 members of Shadow's Nest, nor any of the vessels, had been spared. Everyone had been sealed into a block of ice, their faces etched with hopelessness right to the point of their deaths. Linley continued to hover silently in the sky with the levitation spell. While his black-cloaked figure seemed weak and feeble in the strong wind, he was just like a scythe-wielding Grim Reaper in the eyes of everyone else. No, he was an existence scarier than the Grim Reaper. At least the Grim Reaper chose which lives he wanted to take, but this young mage spared none. He was just like the High Lord, who single-handedly terrorized the whole of Felon 1,200 years ago, equally shocking, and equally ruthless. Sorry for scaring all of you. Linley slowly descended after freezing every last drop of water in the river before lightly dusting off his robes, a bone-chilling smile still on his face. I sent the guests from the Shadow's Nest on their way since it was convenient. The 16 leaders of the forces tried to welcome him with a smile, but after hearing his ominous words, they could not help feeling a wave of terror run through them, and nearly sat down in shock. What a monster! He killed 1,000 people with a single wave of his magic staff. How can he still smile so easily now? Hell, could he really be possessed by Osric, the great executioner? Of course, they still had to keep the smiles on their faces in the midst of their fear. The bastards of the Shadow's Nest deserved to meet their end for harassing Jerosis year after year. They should have been dealt with earlier. Thankfully, Mage Vellic caught all of them today. That's right, we've long been waiting for this day. Mage Vellic, you're too humble. Strings of praise came tumbling forth in a second as Linley smiled, not paying heed to any of it. After placating them with a few casual phrases, he found an excuse to leave before finding Jirian in a quiet corner. Damn it, you're a monster, 1,000 people, alive and kicking, yet you killed all of them, just like that. Hell, how could you not have called me along for something so exciting? Jirian scolded him, excitement written all over his face. Quick, quick, tell this old man, how did you do it? Jirian's eyes glittered as he looked at the sculptures on the banks of Black River before he pressed excitedly, was it the 1,000 miles of ice? Linley did not hide it from him. Yeah, damn it, it's really the 1,000 miles of ice? Jirian froze suddenly as he looked at Linley like he was a dragon spewing flames. Damn it, are you human? I didn't do it on purpose. Linley pursed his lips indignantly as he thought, you think I wanted to do it? Damn it, I still don't know what a mortal king is, or what saying he would wield skeletons as his staff and be crowned king once again means. You think I got to level 16 easily? Damn it, I still don't know when I'll get into more trouble. Hey, wait. After mumbling away for some time, a trace of suspicion appeared on Jirian's fat face again. I've seen people use the 1,000 miles of ice in Alana too, but why wasn't it as powerful as yours? TSK, are you fooling me about freezing over 1,000 people using the 1,000 miles of ice? Well, you know I have a bit of knowledge in the field of pharmaceuticals. Goddamn. Of course Jirian understood what he was getting at. This rascal must have taken some powerful potion before using the 1,000 miles of ice, which caused his magic to become much stronger and result in the horrific scene before them. Damn it, he could kill over 1,000 people in a second with just one bottle of this potion? How could a monster like this exist? Have you got more of such potions? Give me some. Stop dreaming, you really think anyone can use such potions? Linley rolled his eyes as he looked almost weary. I'll be honest with you, this potion is powerful, but so are its side effects. I may look fine, but my mental strength has been drained. What a pity. Linley smiled tiredly as he did not continue with the topic. To be honest, if not because he was going to leave Gerosis in a week, he would not have been willing to use the soul-burning potion. The side effects were unbelievably powerful even to someone like him, and depleted all his mental strength at once, although he had an almost unlimited source of it. However, it could not be helped. He was due to leave Gerosis in a week to head to Breezy Plains, and might not be able to return to this place he had already thought of as home for a couple of years. What would happen to the Emerald Tower and Jirian after he was gone? What if some force that didn't know better decided to attack the Emerald Tower? What was he going to do? So, he could only leave a warning before he left. If someone was eyeing the Emerald Tower, they had better think twice whether they could afford to pay the price of failure. Alright, go get someone to set up a Warlock's Eyes. I need to find a place to rest. Okay, go ahead. Jirian knew what it was like to have one's mental strength depleted, and did not dare disturb Linley any further, only calling on 2 young apprentices to escort Linley to a tent that had just been set up. Jirian felt his eyes water as he looked at the figure walking away, while stumbling occasionally. He still remembered asking this young man if he was willing to succeed him as the leader of the Emerald Tower before the auction, but this young man had replied saying he did not want to be tied down. However, when he thought back on what had happened, he realized that everything this young man did had been for the sake of the Emerald Tower. He had always been secretly helping the Emerald Tower even though he was not always willing. It has been hard on you, Felix. Jirian was right, it had been hard on Linley indeed. Linley slept until the morning of the 4th day as he woke up groggily. The side effects of the soul-burning potion were much too powerful, and even for someone with Linley's mental strength, it had taken him 4 days to deal with most of it. As he walked out of the tent, he still did not feel completely comfortable as his once incredibly sensitive mental strength was now somewhat blunt and slow. He tried releasing 2 wind blades, only to realize that the flow of his mental strength was not as smooth as it used to be, just as though something was interrupting its flow. Seems like 4 days aren't quite enough, Linley shook his head. Well, it was not like he was in a hurry. Besides, mental strength could only recover in about 10 to 15 days anyway. This was a methodical and gradual process that couldn't be rushed. He would naturally recover to the peak of his strength when the time was right. After setting aside his worries, Linley realized that the Demon Fall Valley had taken on a new look after he woke up. The debris outside the Mithril Cave had been cleaned up, and a group of mages were directing the slaves they had taken over from the Shadow's Nest to dig outside the cave. The place had once been charred by magic, but now, tents were set up everywhere as the hundreds of mages brought by the 16 forces did not leave after the fight. They all remained at the Demon Fall Valley instead. This stay had lasted 4 days. Linley scratched his head, feeling perplexed. All of those people were notable figures in Gerosis, and while they might not have thousands of matters to see to every day, they were definitely nothing short of busy, and had business to tend to. How would they have time for vacation in the Demon Fall Valley? Felix, you're awake? Linley had just walked out of the tent when he heard Jirian's voice. I just woke up. Linley nodded before asking curiously, right, why didn't Isra and others go back? I have some trivial matters I'll need their help for. You need their help to raise money? Linley pursed his lips. What else could Jirian ask for if he needed somebody's help? Damn it, am I such a person? Jirian replied indignantly, looking as though he had been wronged, only to burst into laughter after nagging away. Hee hee, that's actually a really great idea. I'll discuss this with Isra later. Damn it, their mages have bombarded this whole place, and ruined all the plants in the Demon Fall Valley. It's only right that they pay for it. You should start doing some good. Can't you see that I'm helping Isra lighten his burden? Think about it, you rascal, you've scared so many people out of their wits with your 1,000 miles of ice. The leaders of the 16 forces are now trembling in their tents, afraid that you'll use it on them one day when you lose your temper. I'm showing them that they are not worthless and won't be wiped out by you by asking them for money. Why don't you ask them, then, see if they are willing to fork out money to help rebuild the Demon Fall Valley? Whatever, you can keep talking. I'll go look for some food. Linley shook his head, defeated. He was no match at all for Jirian when it came to spouting nonsense, and saw no point in continuing. He was starving after sleeping for 4 days straight. It made more sense to satisfy his hunger first. What are you, a pig? Looking for food as soon as you're up? I'll talk to you about that later, but first, I have some important matters to discuss with you. What important matters? Linley looked at Jirian suspiciously. Do you know why the Marathon family supported the Shadow's Nest? Linley scratched his head, uncertain, and asked, I think you've mentioned a treasure map a few days ago? That's right, I'm surprised you remember that. What about it? I thought you said that the treasure map was a hoax? Oh, no. Jirian looked around before leaning closer to Linley discreetly. Let me tell you this, I found out a big secret a few days ago. What big secret? Well, it was a coincidence. Jirian pointed into the distance. You see that mineshaft there? When we were attacking a few days ago, we collapsed the cave, didn't we? After you went to sleep, I had a group of people shovel away the debris from the entrance of the cave, only to find out that it was hollow about 50 meters into the cave. Hollow? Linley frowned when he heard this. If it was hollow, doesn't that mean that something else is hidden in the cave? Could that be where the treasure Jirian was talking about is hidden? That's right, hollow. Jirian nodded firmly. I studied the treasure map thoroughly these last couple of days, and I realized yesterday morning that my previous understanding of it was wrong. The place indicated on the map was not the Forest of Whispers, it's here. Since it was just a treasure map that did not have solid directions, Linley forgot about it by the next morning. Jirian, however, was filled with confidence. He gathered all the manpower and resources available, searching for the treasure. While it was all right for the old man to have great confidence himself, it was a chore for the leaders of the 16 other forces. After reclaiming the Demon Fall Valley, Izura and the others were forced to stay there. Probably by threats and temptation, the middle-aged Fatso managed to make them call for more help from Gerosis. As a reward, Jirian promised them that they would be able to get 2% of the treasure. Alright, 2% was better than nothing. Since it was Jirian's instructions, they naturally didn't bargain with him. Are you joking? Who would dare to seek death when the thousands of ice sculptures are still on the Black River? Hence, the matter was decided just like that. No one was expecting there to be any reward. That was what a fool would have thought. As the Demon Fall Valley had been in Gerosis Guild of Magic's hands for 1,200 years, if there were to have any treasure in the mine hull, how would it fall into the hands of this darn fatso? At the start, everybody was treating it as a long-term investment. It was not important if they were going to find the treasure. As long as they could get closer to Jirian, they would be able to work with a close associate of Mage Felix. But, none of them had expected Jirian to be so serious today. He began to instruct everyone to start digging from the morning and only stop the work at night for consecutive days. It was as though he was determined to dig a hole through the mineshaft. Izura and the others were really tired. At times, they really had the urge to approach Mage Felix to persuade that middle-aged fatso to stop being so crazy. Unfortunately, Linley was as busy as them. When he woke up early in the morning, he brought a few young apprentices to explore the Demon Fall Valley until afternoon, when they returned to the tents with heaps of warlock herbs. What followed was a long and arduous preparation of potions that would last until the evening. It was already dinner time when they would drag their tired bodies out of the tents. Busy days passed the fastest. 3 days had gone by in the blink of an eye. The date to leave Gerosis crept nearer and nearer, but the legendary treasure was nowhere to be found. Yet, to Linley, treasures were not important. The thing he had to do was to create as many good potions as possible. Apart from giving some of them to the Emerald Tower, he could sell the rest for money. He had no other choice. There were really a lot of places that needed money. The Guild of Magic in the Breezy Plains was not cheap to build. Although the Supreme Council would support him by providing a big portion of the costs, he had to prepare 5 million gold coins for himself to live frugally in the Breezy Plains. Furthermore, the Marathon family was a trouble too. How would Wilhelm let the man who had killed his son off so easily? It might not take him long enough to target Linley with all sort of assassination tactics. It was only when Linley acquired a huge amount of fortune that he could ensure he survived the Revenge the Marathon family's plots against him. And it was this reason that caused Linley to publicize the fact that he was creating secret potions. His successful experience from the endless world let him understand a lesson. Although money was not omnipotent, the lack of money was definitely a problem. This type of situation lasted until the morning of the fourth day. The Supreme Council would be sending someone here the next day. Hence, Linley had been packing his things as he planned to return to Gerosis before noon. Before leaving the Demon Fall Valley, Linley went to find Jirian. "What? You are leaving today?" Jirian asked in surprise after seeing that Linley had packed his things. "Yeah, the person from the Supreme Council would come tomorrow. I have to go back and prepare some things before I travel to the Breezy Plains with them. It may take some time before I'm back here again. I've told you that it will be a waste if you don't become a guild president. See? Even though I let you go, the old men in Supreme Council are still after you." Jirian had heard about the happenings during the trial in Alana. He was not shocked that Linley was leaving for the Breezy Plains very soon. He was just still thinking about the words Linley had said before the auction the other day. "Is that true?" Linley asked as he touched his face subconsciously. Could it be that the word president was written on his face? Jirian glared at him, feeling he lost face. "Are you thinking that I'm lying to you?" Yeah. "You are always reasonable," Linley flattered the middle-aged fatso. "Oh, yes. I left behind some secret potions in the tent. Please give half of them to the Emerald Tower, and the other half to the people outside." "All right." Since it had been agreed that Linley had a partnership with him when they were at Gerosis, Jirian would naturally be unable to refuse him. However, after thinking for a while, he asked doubtfully, "There are so many people outside. Whom should I pass them to?" "This is easy," Linley said as he laughed shamelessly. "After you are back, hold an event like an auction, and let them fight for it with money. But, they don't fight for the potions itself. They are going to fight for the status of my business partner. The person who offers the most money will get the exclusive right to manage the sales of these secret potions for 1 year. After 1 year, it will reset, and everyone will bid for the position again." "What the hell, that's so wicked!" Jirian exclaimed in shock. He had seen many shameless people over the decades when he managed the Emerald Tower, but it was his first time seeing such an unabashed man in his life. To invest in a long-term exclusive right to the partnership with a huge amount of money. God damn it, only this kid would think of such an evil rule. Hee, I have no other choice. I really lack money recently. Yeah, that's that, Jirian agreed as he nodded his head. The building of the new guild needed a large amount of funds indeed. As for the profits, they can get 20% of it, while we have the other 80%. You can help me to deposit the earnings into the Glitter Gold Bank through the crystal card you gave me the other day. Sure, no problem. Oh, please don't be too anxious regarding the collapse of your mana. I have found a solution for you. You'll take at least 10 days to regain your powers, but no more than a month. I would recommend you to hold your temper before that. Don't be so impulsive to use your powers like always. Yeah. God damn it, why are you so naggy at such a young age? While the two men conversed, there was suddenly the sound of anxious footsteps. PP President Jirian. Isra called out as he dashed into the tent anxiously. He was not as formal and mature as before. Oh, Mage Velik is here too. Isra, have you seen a ghost? Why are you so nervous? I'm sorry, Mage Velik. I didn't know you were here. My apologies. Isra apologized awkwardly, but he did not have the intention to leave the tent. He rubbed his hands awkwardly, and tried to hint at something to Jirian with his expression. However, Jirian's mind was full of that batch of secret potions, hence, he did not notice Isra's attempts. He only responded to Isra when his facial muscles were nearly having cramps. Isra, you are looking for me? Izura nearly fainted out of frustration. President Jirian, we found it. Found it? After hearing Izura, Jirian was like a dog that had its tail stepped on. He jumped up and asked, you found the entrance? Yes, just a few minutes ago. Entrance? You mean you found the entrance of the treasure cave? That was Linley, who suddenly appeared to take an interest in the topic. However, after hearing that, Izura had a worried expression on his face. He hesitated. What are you hesitating about? Just shoot, Jirian told Izura impatiently. Since there was hope to find the treasure, how would Jirian have the heart to play guessing games with him? Had he really hoped Jirian went to the scene to take a look himself? President Jirian, listen to me. It was like this. Frowning, Izura started to talk about the situation. As Linley was too focused on creating potions these days, he did not get any updates on the progress of the treasure hunt. Now that he heard Izura narrate it, he learned that the speed of the digging was insanely fast. They found the cave in 2 to 3 days, and then they encountered a problem. This morning, the team started digging in the area, and found the passageway that led to the entrance of the cave. It should be a good thing since it meant that it was a clue to the treasure. As long as they followed the passageway, they might be able to find the legendary treasure. Unfortunately, there was still a huge stone door that obstructed the people from the passageway. You can't open it? Linley frowned skeptically. Everyone in the mission was warriors of at least level 8. They were so strong that they could use their bare hands to kill a few magical beasts. How would they be blocked by a mere stone door? I don't know. Linley nearly cursed. Ain't it just a darn stone door? How would somebody not know if they could open it? Did they not try it themselves before they run here to find Jirian? It's like this, Mage Felix. Seeing that the young mage had an annoyed expression, Izura tried to explain desperately. We sent 2 bandits down when we found that stone door. They were supposed to be skilled in dealing with locks, but the moment they touched the door, they stopped moving. Stop moving? Yes, Izura nodded his head firmly, but his eyes were dazed. The situation was too eerie. It was as though somebody used a fixation spell on them. They immediately froze, and when I sent people down to get them back up, they... What the hell, can't you just speak properly? Izura said as he swallowed his saliva uneasily. The 2 bandits lost their consciousness when they came up. It was as though they had turned into fools. So serious? Jirian asked. He couldn't help but frown. Linley listened to Izura quietly. Only when Izura said that the men apparently became retards did Linley suddenly ask, is there anything weird on that stone door? Weird things? Izura said as he reflected on his encounter for a moment. Now that Mage Felix mentioned that, I remember that there is a very strong magical wave around that door. At first, I thought that when the 2 bandits touched the stone door, the magical wave immediately seemed to expand. Indeed. Mage Felix, do you know what's the reason? Yes, Linley replied. If I'm not wrong, there should be some unusual symbols on the stone door. Yes. That's right, there are really some strange symbols. Then it will not be wrong. Come, bring me there at once. Okay. When the 3 men came out of the tent, Jirian was still worried. He asked Linley in a low voice, do you really know what's that? Yup, that should be a mageweth, a very rare one. According to what I know, there are only some high-ranking undead mages who would study such an evil magic. It seems that the treasure should not be just gold and jewelry. Is it really so powerful? Jirian asked. He became anxious when he heard Linley mention high-ranking necromancer. Should I go and find a mightier inscriber? He asked Linley discreetly after looking around for a moment. No need, Linley replied as he shook his head speechlessly. How would there be any other inscriber in Gerosis who would be able to do anything before the Song of the Death Mageweth? He just hoped that no more innocent lives would be wasted. The 2 men discussed as they walked. Not long after, they arrived outside the mineshaft. This time, there were many people outside and inside the mineshaft. There were people from both the Emerald Tower and the large forces. In the middle of the crowd, there stood two bandits in a daze. From one look, Linley could tell that they had lost their mental strength completely. Even God himself would not be able to save them now. Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.